Good morning and welcome to TVP World News. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. This morning, we begin with the European Union. EU leaders will discuss issues of European defense at an informal gathering today in Brussels. Now, apart from heads of states of EU member states, the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer have also been invited to separate meetings. Now, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk will attend an informal meeting of EU leaders at the Palais d'Egmont in the Belgian capital. Now, the discussion will focus on the development and financing of EU's defense capabilities. The agenda for today's meeting in Brussels also includes mobilization of private funding and how best to use EU instruments to strengthen security cooperation between member states. Now, the goal of the discussions is to prepare the next steps towards making the EU a more resilient and reliable transatlantic security partner, which is why the British Prime Minister and the Secretary General of NATO will also attend the meeting. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz arrived in the UK on Sunday to meet with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Now, the visit, just a day before Scholz heads to the informal EU summit in Brussels, is focused on strengthening economic and defense ties between the two countries.
I've been very clear since I became Prime Minister that I do want a reset of the relationship between the UK and the EU. That does not involve a return to the European Union. We had a referendum here on that, and that matter is settled. But I do want to see a close relationship on defence and security, on energy, on trade and our economy, and that is what we're working on.
Globalization, the worldwide exchange of goods and commodities, has proven to be a great success story that has created prosperity for us all, in the UK and Germany, in the USA, but also in many other parts of the world. That's why it's important that we don't divide up the world now with a lot of customs barriers, but that we also make this exchange of goods and services possible for the future.
Speaking to reporters at Joint Base Andrews, Maryland on Sunday night, U.S. President Donald Trump addressed a range of pressing issues, including the war in Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East. Now, the U.S. President announced that there are many upcoming meetings aimed at resolving both conflicts.
We have meetings and talks scheduled with various parties, including Ukraine and Russia, and I think those discussions are actually going pretty well. The discussions on the Middle East with Israel and various and sundry other countries are progressing. Bibi Netanyahu is coming on Tuesday, and I think we have some very big meetings scheduled.
I would like Marco Rubio to come to Ukraine to see what Russia has done. This is what Volodymyr Zelenskyy said during a recent interview with the Associated Press while commenting on the U.S. Secretary of State's statement that the war has set Ukraine back 100 years.
First of all, I would like Marco Rubio to come to Ukraine. It seems to me that for him it is very necessary to look at what Russia has done, because he has made statements that the war set Ukraine back 100 years. I think that this statement raises questions, to be frank, and that's why Mr. Rubio needs to come to Ukraine, first of all to see what Russia has done, but also to see what the Ukrainian people did, what they were able to do for the security of Ukraine and the world, and talk to Ukrainians.
Speaker of the Polish Parliament, Szymon Hołownia, set out on a two-day visit to Estonia. Now, in Tartu, Hołownia will meet with his counterparts from Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Ukraine. Now, the officials will discuss Russian provocations and transatlantic partnership. Now, topping the agenda will be security in the Baltic Sea. According to Hołownia, Poland must put more focus on the region amid hybrid warfare waged by the Russian Federation. Poland's Parliament Speaker added that so far, Poland looked south, focusing on cooperation with the Visegrad Group. Now is the time for the country to once again be active in the Baltic region and establish the country as a leader of Northern Europe. Additionally, the visit is also meant to reaffirm cooperation in facing new security challenges in the region. Police in Georgia arrested several opposition leaders during a protest on Sunday. Now, according to reports, Nika Melia, leader of the country's largest opposition party, the Coalition for Change, as well as former Tbilisi Mayor Georgi Ugulava, were both taken into custody. Now, during anti-government protests on Sunday, demonstrators blocked a motorway on the northern edge of Tbilisi. Now, according to reports, there was a massive police presence with many officers wearing headgear covering their faces. Georgians have been rallying since November, when the ruling Georgian Dream Party said it was suspending EU accession talks until 2028. The demonstrators continue to call for new parliamentary elections. The events on Sunday signaled a renewed strength to the protests, which had dwindled in recent weeks. Donald Trump has said that while a deal with the UK can be reached, the EU will not escape American tariffs. Now, according to the U.S. president, the European has been taking advantage of the U.S., as shown by the over $300 billion trade deficit.
We're going to see what happens. It'll happen. But we'll see how things work out. It might happen with them, but it will definitely happen with the European Union, I can tell you that, because they've really taken advantage of us. And, you know, we have over a $300 billion deficit. They don't take our cars, they don't take our farm products, they take almost nothing. And we take everything from them, millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see the UK, but European Union is really out of line. UK is out of line, but I'm sure that one, I think that one can be worked out. But the European Union it's an atrocity, what they've done.
Thousands of protesters gathered on city streets across Germany on Sunday to express their opposition to the anti-migration law proposed by German Chancellor, hopeful, and CDU leader Friedrich Merz.
Many Germans are appalled to witness what they call a shift to the political right.
I think it's really important to express my opinion here today, because it scares me. It really scares me for this country that, like in other European countries, things are moving to the right.
Or as some protesters frame it, the return to politics of decades gone by.
For the first time since 1945, this is the first time that a fascist party or a party with very strong fascist tendencies, I don't want to belittle that at all, exercise power here, and that must not be allowed to happen in Germany.
I don't want Germany to be governed by Nazis, both as a small coalition partner and as a large coalition partner, and it's better to take to the streets in good time.
Many of those gathered today feel a sense of betrayal at the hands of the Christian Democratic Union Party, whose recent proposals to restrict the influx of migration and asylum seekers appeared to borrow straight from the far-right AfD party's playbook.
I once put it kindly to Mr. Merz, reminding him once again of the hopefully good upbringing he has enjoyed. Hence the saying, "You don't play with Nazis." He gave it a try, and I hope he gets his due for his, yes, misconduct, so to speak.
With just 3 weeks remaining until Germans cast their ballot, opinion polls give the CDU-CSU bloc 30% of the vote, while the AfD trails closely behind. In the meantime, many Germans are determined to show their rejection of increasingly far-right stances in the political mainstream.
Over the weekend, protesters took to the streets of Novi Sad in Serbia and blocked the main bridge in the city for more than 24 hours. This is the latest in a string of protests that have been raging for 3 months now after a deadly train station canopy collapse that claimed the lives of 15. Our Balkans correspondent Pavel Czaskovsky has this next report.
I'm standing now on Sloboda Boulevard in Novi Sad, Serbia, where over the weekend tens of thousands of Serbs joined anti-government protests. As you can see behind me, the protests are no more. They were supposed to last 24 hours. They lasted a bit longer, but at 6 p.m. they finished in an orderly fashion. And on the surface, one can say that things are back to normal. The streets are clean, the waste was mostly removed by the protesters themselves. There are no major signs of vandalism, and the protests were altogether peaceful. And the protesters gathered to oppose the current government and the country's president, Alexander Vučić, who are, according to the protesters, responsible for state capture and are not held accountable for corruption and mishandlings. The blockade of the bridge in Novi Sad, which lasted 24 hours, ground the city to a halt. And on Sunday morning, I went to talk to some of the protesters who decided to spend the night here. And to my question about the future of the protest movement, in their answers one could feel the enthusiasm and optimism, but also some uncertainty.
I expect that we're going to use this energy to achieve our goals. I don't think that this is going to end today. We have just started.
We have some requests as students and some other things that are not really right here in the country currently, and we want to show our will that we're not just gonna shut up and listen to what everybody else says about it. We will see. There's a lot of things in the future I know that also will happen. There's a lot of other protests that are currently being planned or I think are gonna happen soon, because this is not the end for all of us. I think we will continue to fight for what we think is right.
I think we deserve everything like justice and equal rights for all, but I'm not sure what will happen next.
One of the demands of the protesters is to hold those responsible for the Novi Sad tragedy accountable. However, this is a lengthy legal process and it is unclear what results and delivered when would satisfy the protesters. The government and the country's president tried to appease the protesters in other ways. A couple of days ago, the country's prime minister resigned and a major reshuffle of the government was also promised. These moves might even eventually result in the new general elections in the country, a result that might satisfy both sides of this political conundrum. I'm Paweł Trzaskowski from Novi Sad, Serbia for TVP World.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Panamanian President José Raúl Mulino on Sunday. Now, according to reports, U.S. concerns about shipping access to the Panama Canal were at the top of the agenda.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has embarked on his first official state visit since being confirmed into office. His destination? Central America, where he is expected to discuss U.S. trade priorities. Earlier today, Rubio met with the President of Panama. The two will talk about U.S. strategic concerns relating to Chinese companies potentially affecting American shipping access around the Panama Canal. Upon returning to office, Trump threatened to take control of the Panama Canal, built by the United States in the early 20th century and handed over to Panama under a 1977 treaty. He now claims that the waterway has changed without American approval.
Panama's been ripping down all the China language signs. They've been working like mad to try, but about 70% of the signs were up and they were written in Chinese, and that's not the deal. So we're going to take it back.
These claims, however, have been refuted by the Panamanian president.
There is no doubt that the canal is operated by our country, and it will continue to be so. I do not think that there has been a discrepancy in that. The president has his opinion about the Chinese presence, which will be clarified at the appropriate time.
Migration is also on the agenda, unsurprisingly perhaps, seeing that this has been one of Donald Trump's key priorities since taking office.
We have people coming into the country or trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals.
Talks on migration are set to continue during Rubio's grand tour, in which he will visit El Salvador, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and the Dominican Republic.
Donald Trump has commented on the 25% tariffs Washington slapped on imports from Canada and Mexico. Now, speaking at Joint Base Andrews, Trump added that Canada abused the United States for years through oil and energy trade and said that once Canada deals with the issue of illegal migration, the tariffs will end.
Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in. Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street. We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. Number one, that we've got to stop people from pouring into our country, and we've stopped it. They haven't stopped it. We've stopped it. They have to stop people from pouring in, and we have to stop fentanyl, and that includes China. Fentanyl has killed this year at least 200,000 people. It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada.
And that's all for this edition of TVP World News here this morning. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching.